Yeah, hi there. These comments, I'm going to use your initials TM, and I am Michael Buckoff, the founder, owner, and the materials writer for all of your lessons at the 7-step system to pass the TOEFL IBT. And you've paid to have the additional error correction service. I'm going to take one of your integrated writing practice tests, correct it, restructure, expand, delete. I'll tell you anything that you need to do that will make this stronger than what it is. In fact, I'll show you how to score 30 out of 30 on this particular practice test. So you wrote this, and I'm going to save this so you can have both versions. You can have, of course, your version, and then you can take a look at the edited version here. All right, so let's take a look at it one paragraph at a time. Okay, first paragraph you say, both the reading and the lecture are discussing 3 ways of improving business efficiency. I would say here, you want to say here 3, not tree. I would say here, so the title of the article is 3 Tips to Business Success. Now efficiency, I think, is something that is argued, I think, at least by the lecture, but I think that's part of what the lecture's argument is the tips suggested in the reading are not efficient. So maybe you could say this, is the reading passage is discussing how to make businesses more successful, but the listening passage argues or questions those 3 points, and the argument is maybe they're not as efficient as what they seem. So then you might say this. So the reading passage discusses 3 ways of making businesses successful, but the lecture questions maybe the efficiency of these suggestions. So then we might say this. Well, if you do this, let's make it more concise. Argues that I think we got it. So for businesses to be successful, the reading passage argues that all employees should participate in all meetings that they use here recommends, and then I can use subjunctive. So the reading passage recommends that all employees, now we can use subjunctive, which means we don't have to use the should here. We can just say, the problem is you probably have to have a subject each time here. The reading passage recommends that all employees participate in all meetings. And I guess here, then you can say this. Read all the materials given to them. I'm going to say here, bypass or skip. And then say this. When writing reports, now I think we got it. At least the intro. It takes time here. You got to be patient. Okay, let's look at it again. So remember that the reading passage is discussing, I think, how businesses can be successful, and it gives 3 specific suggestions. The lecture seems to question the efficiency of these suggestions. That businesses can be successful without exactly doing these things, right? So then we could say this. For businesses to be successful, the reading passage recommends that all employees participate in all meetings, read all the materials, and bypass the steps or stages of the writing process when writing reports. But the lecture questions the efficiency of these suggestions. Alright, let's take a look at your second paragraph here. So first, the professor claims that the number of meetings employees should attend should be limited and short. I'm going to say in this case it says limited or short. It's kind of like the same thing. It's saying that a short meeting but long meetings that are longer than 60 to 90 minutes are unproductive, right? So I think we can make this a little bit more concise than how you have written this. So I'm going to say the number of employee meetings Now wait a minute, I think you're okay here. Should be limited and short. Limited means how frequent you have them. Short is the duration of it. So let's see what it says here. So the professor claims that the number of employee meetings should be limited and short. According to him, long meetings are not productive. He recommends instead of calling meeting workers, try to deal with. He does say long meetings. How about this? Are not productive since usually, I'm going to say that's the wrong word order there. I'm going to put this right before the verb because it's an adverb and it modifies that verb here. So then we'll say, according to him, meetings longer than 60 minutes are not productive. are usually unproductive, right? I'm going to say might be, because he says usually. He doesn't say they're always that way, right? So we have to make sure that the tone that we use matches the tone that we see. So according to him, meetings longer than 60 minutes might be unproductive since workers usually stop paying attention. Here's the thing though, let me take a look at the lecture here. I'm not sure that you have this exactly. Here's what it says in the lecture. It says, long meetings beyond 60 to 90 minutes are usually unproductive. Leaders often spend too much time reciting introductory material and participants eventually stop paying attention. So what you said here is since workers stop paying attention after about 60 minutes, that's not exactly what it says. It's saying they may stop paying attention if leaders spend too much time reciting introductory material. So you might say this. You might say, especially if leaders spend too much time introducing I'll change material to topics. I think that this more exactly paraphrases the idea here. So according to him, meetings longer than 60 minutes might be unproductive since workers usually stop paying attention, especially if leaders spend too much time covering introductory topics. He recommends that instead of calling a meeting, workers should try to deal with issues through email or phone calls. That's right. So workers should try to deal with issues using emails I think he says here, or. It doesn't say you have to do both, right? So I'm going to change that to or. So he recommends that instead of calling a meeting, I'm going to probably throw a comma right here. He recommends that no, that's not right. It's here. Now, he recommends that instead of calling a meeting, now what we're doing is we're setting apart this prepositional phrase from the rest of the sentence, right? He recommends that instead of calling a meeting, workers should try to deal with issues using emails or making phone calls. In addition, they should either decline going to the meeting, or I think he's saying here, inform you want to say here leave, not live, right? I think this more accurately explains. So In addition, they should either decline going to the meeting or inform participants that they will leave the meeting after 60 minutes. I think that, because it does say here, it says, if that's not an option, make clear that you can stay only for the first 60 minutes and will then have to deal with more pressing obligations. Okay, now let's take a look at what you said about the reading passage. However is a good word to use because the reading is different from the information in the lecture. Now, my only problem here is if you're summarizing and explaining information, you probably should say a little bit more about the reading passage. So you say, however, the reading passage argues that companies need to schedule. You want to say here, I'm put as many meetings as possible. And it does say here, they're effective for two things: discussing controversial issues, you have problems, and then you have staying up to date with current technology needed to complete their job. Now, you left that out. Now, I don't think that's a good idea. That's an important point that's mentioned in the reading. You want to make sure you cover all your bases here. So, I'm going to say this, and now I think we're okay. Probably get rid of that. So I think it's a problem that you left out that work-related technology thing, right? So you have, however, the reading argues I'm going to say that. However, the author in the reading passage argues that companies need to schedule as many meetings as possible since they are an excellent way of dealing with problems and staying current with modern work-related technology. I think we're good. Okay, now we have your next paragraph. The teacher argues that workers do not have to read reports entirely because it is a waste of time. Let's see what we have here. Okay, so the next paragraph is, do not read the full text of everything, even if it comes directly from the boss. Now, it's not saying here that it is a waste of time, but I'm looking at the lecture right now. It says it might not be the best use of your time. So because it might be a misuse of time. Okay, so this is the second time this has come up. This is something you want to be a little bit careful about, is when you're paraphrasing, you want to make sure that you don't change the meaning of the things that you are paraphrasing. You have to keep the meaning the same. Now, I like how you're using different vocabulary and different grammar. That's good. But you want to make sure you're not changing the meaning of things, or you're not leaving out, like you did here, an important point. You have to make sure you include all the necessary points and don't change the meaning in any way. Now here the professor claims, let's do this a different way. Workers do not have to read imports entirely. How about this? How about that? Now what you're doing is you're not trying to use exactly the same grammar. The professor claims here, according to the speaker in the lecture, you're kind of putting that signal phrase in the middle. It's showing a little bit variety in how you're introducing things. So workers do not have to read reports entirely, according to the speaker in the lecture, because it might be a misuse of time. According to him, only small portions of each are important. Now let's see if that's what he said. No, he says most likely only a small part of that article is vital to your work. He used important, which is a synonym for vital. So let's say probably matches the tone, I think. This is kind of what you've done a few times. You're taking a tone which is a less certain tone and you're changing it to a more certain tone. So the speaker said here, it says most likely only a very small part of the article is vital to your work. So I changed yours to say, according to him, only small portions of each report are probably important. And that kind of matches the tone. He thinks that focusing on main ideas is a more efficient way of reading a report. So let's take a look at that. That's exactly right. That's perfect. Now let's go to the next one. So you have, in contrast, the reading states that reading materials given. Okay, let's go back to that. Okay, in contrast, the reading states that reading materials given to employees will help them perform better at work, and that it is recommended that they read them completely instead of looking for main ideas. Now here's something that you could do here that would help out a little bit here. So you have, and that is recommended that they read completely instead of looking primarily means mostly, instead of primarily looking for main ideas, comma, as the professor suggests in the lecture. Now we've kind of synthesized that last sentence there. You're combining information from the reading and the lecture. So in contrast, the reading states that reading materials given to employees will help them perform better at work, and that it is recommended that they read them completely instead of primarily looking for main ideas, as the professor suggests in the lecture. So in your final paragraph here, you say, lastly, when it comes to writing reports, the professor admits that workers should not try to write in perfect and complete sentences. Let me correct this. Hold on before I forget. The problem here is, with this final point, You'll notice with each topic you have the professor claims a number of employee meetings should be limited and short. That's exactly, I think, the topic of the lecture. The next one is workers do not have to read reports entirely because it might be a misuse of time. In this case, we have the main point, another point of the lecture. But you've missed it on this one. Let's go back. I actually revised your thesis here where it says, and bypass the steps of the writing process when writing reports. This is the idea you're not exactly getting. And we have to revise this, I think, in order to make this last paragraph more accurate. So it says, if you listen to the lecture, the very last idea, the final suggestion that is important in helping you and other employees to become more efficient is to follow the steps in the writing process. This is a generalization. This is a topic. This is important. Now, then we can put this idea that you have written here, but we needed to give it a topic before you get to the details. The detail here, when it comes to writing reports, the professor admits that workers should not try to write imperfect and complete sentences. Admits or concedes is like admitting, like a counter-argument. I don't think that's the right word here. I'm going to say explains. So instead, I'm going to say, for the sake of saving time, he proposes to make an outline, write a quick draft, put a comma here, and finally revise and correct so he proposes to make an outline. I'm just checking for accuracy here. So we have here first, compose an outline, write a rough draft, the lecturer says. Write a quick draft, that's the same meaning, good vocabulary. And then finally revise and correct the mistakes. However, okay, let's go back. So I think you're okay here. Now we need to look at what you've done with the reading, right? So I think we're okay here. So lastly, to help employees become more efficient writers, the professor suggests that they follow the steps of the writing process. When it comes to writing reports, the professor explains that workers should not try to write imperfect should not initially try kind of like means in the beginning. So the professor explains that workers should not initially try to write imperfect and complete sentences, since it would take too long to complete the reports. Instead, for the sake of saving time, he proposes to make an outline, write a quick draft, and finally revise and correct the mistakes. Okay, now let's take a look at the reading passage. However, the reading states a report should be written all at once, since writing them in separate steps will waste time. Okay, let's see what it says. I think you're pretty close to summarizing that. I'm just checking the reading right now. However, and then you say, however, the reading states the report should be written at once, since writing them in separate steps will waste time. I'm going to just add this. I think that's an important word that you didn't include. However, the reading states that reports should be written all at once, so you're using a direct quote Here's the problem, though, is if you're looking at the quote, I don't think it's going to work. Because you said, it says in the reading passage they should write the document all at once. You're saying that reports should be written all at once. That's actually not exactly the same quote. If you put it in quotes, you're reproducing exactly what you have in the reading passage, but you changed it from active to passive voice. So I'm going to say that you do not need the quote there, because that's really not an exact quote. If you do an exact quote, you'd have to say they should write the document all at once. That would be exactly quoting it. So the reading passage states a report should be written all at once, since writing them in separate steps I'm going to say that the key idea here how about this? I think we can make this more concise. Use a gerund. Since separating the steps in the writing process will waste time. Just don't even need future there. Okay, here, so your final paragraph say, ultimately the lecture casts doubt. I would say here, on the reading passage by stating, here's a problem here. You have reading and writing reports all at once, well, in fact, so you have to say here, having, so that way we have parallel structure. Having too many frequent and long meetings, so reading all reports in detail and writing reports all at once will in fact make businesses less efficient. That's it. Now this is why I went to the beginning. If you look at what you said here, you look at what we did in the beginning, you'll see a little bit better connection here. You see, for businesses to be successful, the reading passage recommends that all employees participate in all meetings, read all the materials, and bypass the steps of the writing process when writing reports, but the lecture questions the efficiency of these suggestions. And that connects to what you said here at the end. You see what I'm saying? Now we have a little bit better connection between the beginning and the end. That's why I revised your introduction like I did. Okay, let me save this. Now let's double check some of the spell check. Okay, let's read it one more time. I'll make a few more corrections. I think we're good. Now, what I'm trying to do here is to show you how to get 5 out of 5 or 30 out of 30. Now, of course, it's taking me, like 30 minutes to do this, but I think one of the things that you can get from this video is this. In terms of your paraphrasing, don't change the tone of the writing. You did this a few times. You changed things from an uncertain tone to you had more of a what's called a possible type tone to a more certain tone. You have to keep the tones the same. So if I say to you, it might rain today, you can't go to somebody else and says, Michael says that it will rain today. That's not exactly what I'm saying. Now, if you say, well, Michael says it could rain, or it's possible that we have rain today, you can say something like that. So that's one thing that you want to be careful about. All right, let's start from the top. For businesses to be successful, the reading passage recommends that all employees participate in all meetings, read all the materials, and bypass the steps of the writing process when writing reports. But the lecture questions the efficiency of these suggestions. First, the professor claims that the number of employee meetings should be limited and short. According to him, meetings longer than 60 minutes might be unproductive since workers usually stop paying attention, especially if leaders spend too much time covering introductory topics. He recommends that instead of calling a meeting, workers should try to deal with issues using emails or making phone calls. In addition, they should either decline going to the meeting or inform participants that they will leave the meeting after 60 minutes. However, the author in the reading passage argues that companies need to schedule as many meetings as possible since they are an excellent way of dealing with problems and staying current with modern work-related technology. Second, workers do not have to read reports entirely, according to the speaker in the lecture, because it might be a misuse of time. According to him, only small portions of each report are probably important. He thinks that focusing on main ideas is a more efficient way of reading a report. In contrast, the reading states that reading materials given to employees will help them perform better at work, and that it is recommended that they read them completely instead of primarily looking for main ideas, as the professor suggests in the lecture. Lastly, to help employees become more efficient writers, the professor suggests that they follow the steps of the writing process. When it comes to writing reports, the professor explains that workers should not initially try to write perfect and complete sentences since it will take too long to complete the reports. Instead, for the sake of saving time, he proposes to make an outline, write a quick draft, and finally revise and correct the mistakes. However, the reading states that reports should be written all at once, since separating the steps in the writing process wastes time. Ultimately, the lecture cast doubt, need a verb there, the lecture casts doubt on the reading passage by stating that having frequent and long meetings, reading all reports in detail, and writing reports all at once will in fact make businesses less efficient. And maybe, and consequently, less successful. Maybe we could say that. Maybe one more idea there. Okay, we got it. How many words did we get here anyway? So we got, you probably don't need exactly, you got 391 words. If you're over 250, you should be in pretty good shape. Okay, so here's what you wrote, right? And then here's what I wrote. Now, in terms of my online TOEFL course, I don't know. I think overall you're in pretty good shape here. You definitely know how to structure, I think, the integrated writing task. So I don't really have any big suggestions for you in terms of your structure. Keep doing what you're doing. I think the biggest issue that could cause problems for you for the integrated writing practice test is the fact that you change ideas, or you change the tone from the reading or the lecture to the information in the writing response that you're doing. So make sure that you have a complete, accurate response of the information. Now, you can learn more about this if you go to my reading lesson number 1, my writing lesson number 1. No, actually, listening lesson 1 and reading lesson 1, they cover note-taking. The importance of note-taking during the reading and the listening, and also the integrated speaking and integrated writing sections of the exam, right? So, I think my TA might be a little bit hard on you. I would be comfortable even with yours going a little higher. The way that you wrote it, I could see you could probably get maybe 3.0 out of 5 on it, but it's going to be difficult for you to score higher than that because of some of the issues that I brought out in the particular essay. Okay, so anyway, thank you for your hard work, and I hope that this video has given you a pretty good idea on how you can improve your writing for the integrated section of the TOEFL IBT.